All right.
Hey,
There we go. Now can you see everything?
no, I can't see you.
What? That's crazy.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's okay. And it's like zoomed in on you, which is really weird.
Super zoomed?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not good.
No, no,
Nobody wants to see that.
no. I wouldn't say that, but yeah, it's fine. It's all good. So,
I'll
um,
just pretend like I can see you.
yeah, I'm telling you, I'm pretty sure this is going to probably cut us out, but we'll see. If it does, obviously I'll just restart it again. We'll pick up from where we left off. So no big deal. The beauty of technology in the 21st century, it's amazing.
I know.
Okay, right. All right, everybody. So let's get started because we got a bunch of topics to talk about. Again, this is the Art of Mindful Medicine, episode 20. Thank you all for joining, whether you're watching this live or the recorded episode of it. I really appreciate your time being with us. My name is Dr. Seth Gilson. I'm a biological dentist, certified yoga teacher, speaker, and personal coach. And Dr. Tyna, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate you coming on here. And as a quick intro, Dr. Tyna Moore is a naturopathic and chiropractic physician, and #1 best-selling author of the book Pain Free and Strong, and podcast host. Her current passions include training naturopathic doctors in regenerative medicine, her specialty in clinical practice for over a decade, as well as broadening their reach through digital and online marketing so that they can have a stronger impact, optimize their business, and enjoy more balance in their lives. So, Dr. Tyna, again, thank you so much for coming on here. And as always, I always like to start with gratitude. So if you would be it would be so wonderful of you to grace us with 3 things that you are grateful for today, as well as introduce yourself a little bit to everybody.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really sad I can't see your face because I finally was excited that we
Yeah,
got to
I
connect.
know. I'm sure this is, unfortunately, I think this is going to cut out at some point, but it's
That's all
all
right.
good.
Well, I'm grateful for this opportunity and to finally meet you. So there's one.
Hmm.
I'm grateful for my good health today. Every day I wake up and feel good. That's a bonus. I didn't always have that in my life.
Hmm.
And I'm grateful for my dog, who is such a cute little thriving rescue dog. She was just being super cute this morning. So I
Beautiful.
am great. I'm grateful for her.
Very beautiful. I definitely resonate with all 3 of those things. It's a pleasure to meet you finally. I am great. That's part of my gratitude practice. Grateful for my and my family's good health every single day, for sure. And I am a big animal lover, especially dogs. So I feel you on that one, big time. All
They're the
right.
best.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. So let's get right into this. And I want to start with talking about you a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood life, growing up, where you're from, things like that?
Sure. So I grew up all over. I was born in the Midwest in St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm very much a Midwest girl, even though my parents moved me out of there when I was 6. I think it got instilled in me through my dad. Um, Grew up on the West Coast in California predominantly, and then moved to Oregon when I was 15. I, pretty much had been living off of like Velveeta cheese and corn chips at that point for
Okay.
years. And so by the time I got to Oregon, I was not well. I was a pretty sick little kid, and this was kind of the culmination of it all. And I quickly succumbed to the winter depression. Not good times. And then
Hmm.
just lots of trials and tribulations with my health. At 19, I almost died of cytomegalovirus. It's
Wow.
just been a long, sordid haul. So I am familiar with the term long haulers, and I was one. What's blowing my mind right now is that in the current situation, that seems to be a lot of what people are focusing on to like
Hmm.
continue their concern and fear narrative. And I'm like, dude, this has been going on with like every infectious disease known to man for a long time. And all of those people, all of us have been written off or called malingerers or called all kinds of things. But now
Yeah.
suddenly it's like front and center and everybody's very concerned. So, so anyway, my path took me a lot of different ways. And I was fortunate enough to land after many years in my 20s, very sick, lots and lots of pharmaceuticals later, lots and lots of experimental drug trials on me. I ended up on the doorstep of a naturopathic physician named Rick Marinelli, who was just an absolute genius. This was long before there was functional medicine. This was back in the mid 90s, and he was just amazing. He was an acupuncturist and a yogi and a naturopathic doctor, and he took me on as his receptionist, and I learned the ways of the force from him.
Very cool.
And just such an incredible opportunity. I spent almost 20 years with him, part of which I was going to school, and he died fairly unexpectedly of
Oh
cancer. Well,
wow.
he got cancer unexpectedly, and he died 2 years later. And so it's just been a really long journey. And right around the time he was diagnosed, I knew if I did not get my health together that I wasn't going to make it, because when I go into grief, I tend to waste. And I was already starting out pretty deconditioned and skinny and working way too many hours trying to build my practice. And I was in a bankruptcy and I was a single mom. And like, I mean, I went to 2 schools concurrently and I had just come out of that. Like, it was just a
Wow.
total nightmare of health. And I was pretty sure I was going to have a heart attack if I had stayed down the trajectory I was on. And him getting sick kind of saved my life, oddly enough, because I started training pretty consistently to get stronger so that I could endure his death, because I knew it was coming. And
Hmm.
so it was weird, you know, the minute he announced that he had cancer, I immediately heard like a glass castle crashing around me, because I knew it was not going to be okay. And everybody's like,
Wow.
oh no, it's just HPV throat cancer. He'll be fine. And it was not okay. So anyway, that pretty much induced some pretty hardcore PTSD.
Yeah, I
I
can imagine.
I immediately started planning my escape from clinical practice. I'd been in practice about 5 years at that point. Busiest time of my life. I was one of the very successful naturopaths out there. Like, I was doing very, very well for myself. And I kind of made a 5 year plan to get out. I saw this coming, and that's a whole other story, but I knew this was coming down the chute, this current situation. And I knew that I needed to be autonomous and not in a brick and mortar. So about 2 years ago, I permanently closed my practice, which was hard.
Hmm.
Which is hard for, it was hard for a lot of people in my profession to accept, because I was one of the quite successful ones. I had a cash practice in an insurance-based state. I was really at the top of my game, and I closed it down, and there's like no support group for those of us who were called to healing, who wanted to be a healer our entire lives, who spent our entire lives pursuing that route, who found great success in it. I had all the patients I could ever want. And then to close it down, like, there's no way to, you know, you try to talk to your colleagues about it, they kind of get mad at you for doing it. Like, people were
Hmm.
actually angry with me. Like, how
Wow.
could you do such a thing? You were one of the successful ones. And then other people think that you like somehow got in trouble and that's why you closed. So there's all a lot of emotion around it. And I was finally just starting to catch my groove. And I was like, 2020, I've got my coaching business up and running, very successful at that, making a lot more money, having a lot more fun, a lot less liability, really getting my health together, feeling stronger than ever. 2020 was going to be the year to chill and travel. Like, I had it all set up. My kid's old enough. She's almost 21. Like, everything was going to be, you know, I have a hot guy. I was going to take him traveling around the world with me. Everything was flowing. I was in the flow. And then this happens. And I was like, of course.
Right.
Here we are. And I had been joking about the zombie apocalypse. Anyone who knows me, who's known me for a long period of time, has heard me say that multiple times. And when
Hmm.
I train hard, and people say, what are you training for? And I'm like, oh, I'm training for the zombie apocalypse. And I've been, you know, joking, not joking about it, completely talked about it with my daughter her whole life. Like, she knew it was
uh,
coming. So when this hit, I was like, this is what I have been talking about. And she was like, all right, let's do it. So she's
yeah.
actually doing really well in all of this. And
Awesome.
yeah, we're doing okay. Like, we're getting through and taking care of our people and doing the best we can. So
Well,
that,
it's beautiful that it seems like you definitely follow your intuition. I mean, I imagine a lot of your colleagues couldn't understand it because you couldn't fully explain it.
yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
mean, and that's hard when you can't see, you know, the light's there, but you can't see it, and you know the direction you need to move anyways. It's hard for other people to accept. I mean, for
Yeah,
sure. So
it's true.
I definitely commend you for following your heart and things like that. And you know, it's funny how life kind of pushes us in unknown directions, but it's where we're supposed to be, I suppose. So
Yeah.
that's the best way I can I can explain things that are going on. Um,
My body gives me an actual visceral reaction when I'm on the wrong course. Like,
wow.
I will, I mean, for like in this case, I had 5 months of chronic pneumonia, and finally lawyer was like, Tina, you have got to send the letter and close the practice. Like, this is killing you, this indecision. And the minute I did it, within a
Wow.
week, my pneumonia cleared up. It's just amazing how the universe aligns. So I often, when people say, how do you know? I liken it to a bird in a cage. I know when I'm in the wrong situation, because I am that like super spirited bird that somebody decided, oh, she's beautiful, let's put her in a cage, and I start bashing myself into
Yeah.
the sides of the wall until I'm
Yeah.
bloody and dying.
Hmm.
I've done that I've done that in marriages, I've done that in friendships, I've done that in career choices, and it's the same thing every time. When I start bashing myself against the sides of the walls of the cage, it's time to get out of the cage.
I was going to say it's time to move for
Yeah.
sure. Um, so one of the things you talked about was a significant health issue that you had in your youth. You said you actually almost died from viral infection.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, I know that's kind of sparked a lot of the knowledge that you have about the current situation and things like that. But can you tell us about your experience with that?
Yeah, so twice over actually. Once when I was 19, I was in undergrad going to college at Portland State University. Um, I was like living downtown in the city, love that city, grew up in that city. And I was not feeling well, and I was skin and bones, and I had not been feeling well for a long time. Although I was a really bad vegetarian, I wasn't eating. I was like a mac and cheeseitarian. I was not doing it right. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. I was
Eesh.
binge drinking, like at college level binge drinking,
Well,
and living off of Sun Chips and Snapple. So it's really no surprise. Um, and I went into the student health center, and they ran a panel of tests looking for Epstein-Barr because they assumed I had mono, right? That
hmm.
would be logical in that age group. And the doctor came back in. It was a female doctor, and I'm ever so grateful to her. She said, I mean, this is in 1992. So they said, you have cytomegalovirus. And I was like, what is that? And they said, well, we're not really familiar with it, but your titers are sky high, and we usually don't see this. She's like, we never see this. And I don't know
Hmm.
anything about it, but we never see this unless somebody actually has HIV. And this is in early 90s. And I'm like,
Yeah.
tests for HIV were pretty new, and you had to wait a while, like weeks and weeks to get results. And so there I was, terrified, thinking, oh my goodness. So that was a hit, and I had to go home, and I had to take the quarter pretty much off. And I went a little bit crazy. I found out later that cytomegalovirus hits your brain and causes psychosis, which was happening. They didn't know what to
Wow.
do with me. Fast forward a few years later, and I'm working for my mentor, Dr. Rick Marinelli, and he shared with me, he's like, you weren't crazy. You weren't manic depression. All those years I was being treated for manic depression after the virus with hardcore antidepressants and antipsychotics, feeling like a complete zombie trying to get through my 20s, my early 20s. I meet Rick, and he's like, no, cytomegalovirus attacks the brain. Like, we know this.
Hmm.
And that was what was happening to you. As I begin working for him, I end up being diagnosed with ITP, which is idiothrombocytic cytopenic purpura, which is like my body is attacking my platelets. So it's my first autoimmune disease.
Hmm.
And that was probably viral driven as well. It probably was
Yeah.
a sequelae of the cytomegalovirus, but that happened, and that was a nightmare. That shifted me out of being a vegetarian. I'm type O, so like eating meat actually helps me quite a bit.
Me too.
Really got myself, you know, in a pickle there with the autoimmune situation. It ultimately almost ended up killing my daughter when I gave birth to her. It just was a whole other nightmare, which looking back on now, around the same time too, I was bit by a tick. So I believe there was probably some Lyme in there. So anyway, it was just a nightmare of my 20s. Like getting
Yeah.
through my 20s was like the gauntlet.
Yeah.
So I finally get into my 30s. I'm going to two programs concurrently, naturopathic and chiropractic college. I'm driving
Uh,
across the city full time in two medical programs with a little child, and I get hit with
Jeez.
the flu in 2005 and ended up with meningitis. That was a whole other nightmare. Pneumonia, secondary pneumonia. After I came out of that, I made it like my hobby to study viruses, like hardcore. I needed to understand all the pandemics. I needed to understand everything that was happening. And, with this situation, it just, to me, the reason I say I saw it coming, one was it was I'm pretty clairvoyant, and I don't mean to sound woo, but I I have a spidey sense, I call it. I've always had it since I was a child, and I'm always right. I could fervently, I could feel something coming, you know, very fervently. And interestingly enough, my dog died very unexpectedly. My dear sweet Chihuahua that I'd had for a decade, she died unexpectedly. I ended up getting a rescue dog who is part coyote. I didn't know this at the time. She was just a cute little puppy.
Uh-huh.
She ends up being part coyote. Weird dog, great coyote.
Yeah.
And I joked, I'm like, oh, the zombie apocalypse must be near because I got my zombie apocalypse dog. Like, this dog is full on, like, won't let anyone touch her, won't let anyone near her except me. And she's on full alert with those ears all the time. And we're like a team, right? So, and then I met this man who lived out on 40 acres of land who I fell dearly in love with. And I was like, well, I guess it's coming.
Yeah.
And there it was. So, and you know, it's just a matter of time. Our population in the world was so sick, and the planet is so sick. It's just a matter of time before Mother Nature, you know, comes.
It comes in waves.
Yeah.
And then each time, if you don't appropriately respond, I'll say the wave gets bigger the next time around. So So first of all, I want to thank everybody for joining. I see a bunch of comments and highs and everything. I'm very grateful to have you guys all here, and thank you very, very much. So now I kind of have a better understanding of what drove you into naturopathic medicine. So thank you for that, because that was one of my next questions. But one of the things that we talked a little bit about, and I know you've done some lives about and posted about, is the difference between motivation and discipline. So if you could please kind of elaborate on that a little bit, please.
Yeah. So motivation doesn't exist, really. It doesn't. I mean, you get waves of it, you get blips of it, but it really comes down to discipline. And I train for life. I eat for life. It's really not, having been as sick as I was for so long. I mean, just really for a minute, imagine, and some of you listening know what this feels like trying to pull yourself out of bed every morning, feeling quite literally like you could die that day. And that goes on for decades. I mean, from the time I was 14 until the time about a year ago, I felt like that. I felt horrible all the time. And I have accomplished a tremendous amount in my career path. I mean, it's not just about my practice. I've built out tons of courses. I've built an online presence. I've done all of this stuff. Like I didn't just build an online presence. I have the clinical licks. I spent 10 years in a busy practice. And I'm not trying to toot my horn. I did that overachieving thing, that like pathological because I felt like I had been so gypped of so much energy for so long that when I got it, I would just burn it all up, right? I would just, So I'm learning to pace. I'm almost 47 and I'm really I'm really learning to pace at this point because I don't quite have the, resources to burn up, but I believe so firmly that it just comes down to daily decisions, and like when I was dating my now fiance, he's a great sleeper. Thank God. He's a great sleeper. But before him, I would meet men and I would be dating them and their sleep would be a total train wreck and it would affect my sleep. And they would say, well, that's just something you have to deal with. And I'm like, au contraire. Like there are a few things that are not negotiable at all.
Little do you know, I don't have to deal with it.
No, I don't. In fact, I don't have to deal with anything really.
Yeah.
But, sleep. The food I choose to put in my mouth, and I say choose because that is a conscious choice. Every morsel that I ingest, I choose to consume. There's no like third power hanging over me, shoving my face in donuts. That's all me. I know my microbiome does dictate that, and I understand that, and I respect that, but it is still a choice. I choose when I go to bed and get up. I choose if I make a habit out of strength training. I need more yoga in my life. I have chosen to neglect that, which I shouldn't be, right? I own that. I own every decision I make, and I chose to chain smoke, and I chose to eat shitty food, and I chose to make bad decisions about how I lived my life. And it got me sick. I gave myself those autoimmune diseases. Those were 100%. Yes. Was the genetic components there? Yes. Was the environmental insult there? Yes. But I did a lot of that to myself. That was a lot of self-destructive talk, and your cells are listening to all the horrible things you say to yourself. And I was when I was 20, I was sure I was going to be dead by 25. I just was absolutely convinced of it. So I lived my life at full throttle. And then
Hmm.
I got to 25 and I was like, oh crap, what do I
I'm
do
still
now?
here.
I better go big, right? And then I struggled for the next almost 10 years. Finally got out. I was in practice. I worked really hard to get those degrees, but like part of that was, a very hard push. But then I was in practice and I was at full capacity. I was seeing patients 5 days a week, full time, and cash practice. You think I would be happy. And I'm like, I am taking on a tremendous amount of stress and
Yeah.
liability for the small amount of money that I'm bringing home. This is
Yeah.
not worth it to me. What is plan B? So I started working on my online presence. And I remember clearly about 9 months in, my mom saying, Tina, you have to stop. You have 2 full-time jobs and a little girl and you're dying. And she was doing my books at the time. And she's like, this is not adding up. And I was like, I'm so close, Mom. I can feel it. I'm on the precipice of this. And boom, it caught and it took. And that year I was very successful, and it's been more and more successful since. And I'm so grateful that I had the wherewithal to just hang in there and know and trust the process. And it all came down to discipline. It's just get up, create the content, do the things like you're doing right now, like we're doing right now, you
Hmm.
know, like do the things every day that set you apart from 99% of the rest of the human population who doesn't want to do the things or
Yeah.
complains about doing the things, right?
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like, so you found your sense of accountability and responsibility to yourself, and recognize the things that you were doing wrong. And I think accountability and awareness it's really the first step of anything,
Yeah.
essentially. And I was gonna say, how do you learn that discipline? And it's just by doing it.
Yeah. It's just
And,
doing.
yeah,
Yeah. You
it's
just,
making
it's reps.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just because the more you do the thing, the less you're scared of doing the thing, and you start to see the path. It's also, I think, understanding the long game of it all.
yeah.
Like, I really don't, especially having come out of chronic sickness and weakness and chronic pain, which is a whole other thing I didn't even mention. I mean, I suffered terribly with massive chronic pain for a decade. Coming out of that and realizing that this is the long game. There's no short-term payoffs. Like they
Hmm.
might be nice, but they're fleeting, right? Even
Yeah,
even if you get the perfect, it's kind of like hormones. I did a lot of hormone replacement therapy, and I would give people hormones, and I would say, look, you're going to feel amazing in about 2 weeks. You're going to think I am a godsend. In about a
hmm,
month, you're not even going to believe you could feel this good ever again. In about 60 days, you're going to be like, damn, I am like on top of the world. And at 90 days, you're going to completely bonk and hit the wall. And
yeah,
why is that? Because if you don't do all these other things, all the things I talk about in my book, all the things every single day, these hormones eventually, because of the way endocrinology works, you're going to bonk and hit the wall and you're going to feel like shit. And you're
yeah,
going to come back here and point at me and say, it's my fault that I need to change the dose.
yeah.
And I'm going to say, au contraire, are you strength training? Are you doing mindfulness? Are you sleeping? Are you in pathologic relationships? Do you hate your job? Do you hate your spouse? Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating a nutrient rich diet that's comprehensive and varied? What's your toxic load look like? All the things, right? And there's no magic bullet. There's no quick fix.
Yeah, there isn't. And I was actually I was talking about this the other day, that the greatest pharmacy you're ever going to find is within you. It's within each and every single one of us. There's nothing that you can find outside of us, that pharmacologically speaking, that you don't have within you. So
Yeah.
you can do it. Again, it's just a matter of doing. And I'm not saying this is easy for some people, and I don't
No.
mean to imply things like that anybody can do anything, but it's just about making a decision every single day to be a little bit better. And you're going to go through spurts of where things get a lot better really fast, and then you're going to go through spurts where you feel like you plateaued, and maybe you didn't. You have to change things up a little bit, but it's just that daily decision, like you said, to get up out of bed no matter what, and just to do the thing that helps you do more things.
Yep.
um,
You know what really did inspire me was my daughter. I think having my daughter is, I
mhm.
always say, like, my daughter being here, my daughter was a whoops. I was not planning on becoming pregnant or having a child with all the health issues I had. Like, that was not a good idea. And she has struggled because of it. I probably physically should not have done that.
Yeah.
But she's here and I love her dearly and she's amazing. And she is one of the smartest I'm going to cry. She's one of the strongest, smartest women I've ever met. And she had such a difficult time the past few years. And I always said, just get through this because your time is going to come and people are going to follow you because of your strength. And she's just starting to wake up to that. But her being here just, for me, like, she didn't deserve a piece of shit mom that laid on the couch and complained about migraines. And I mean, no disrespect to anybody out there who's suffering from migraines, but for me, it just was non-negotiable. I didn't come from money. I did not have a wealthy family. I have a very blue collared, you know, not, they're comfortable, but not super comfortable. I went into enormous debt to find out the information I have inside of me, you know, inside of this brain. I've spent well over $500,000 on my brain. So,
yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
I know.
It's a knowledge quest. It really is. And it was to help me and my family moving forward. My mom almost died last year. And I kid you not, if I had sent her down that straight allopathic route, she would have died. We did a hybrid model and I really jumped in the ring. And if it weren't for my regenerative knowledge and all of the things I brought to the table from my decade of experience and my mentors' knowledge that he imparted upon me and the legacy that I carry forward, my mom would be dead. And here I had been bitching about my student loans all these times. You know, I've spent over $100,000 paying back my loans and I've only touched the interest.
I know.
You know, like, it's insane.
Unfortunately, I do know.
It's insane what we do. And I remember last year thinking, you know what, who cares if I still have this much debt because my mom's alive. My mom's alive because of it, you know? So we never know. And I wouldn't be here being able to help. Like, I truly feel like I didn't really believe in God that much until this whole thing started because I had been working so hard. You know, my following was up on Instagram. It was like up to 14,000, which was really hard work to, you know, it's really hard work to get there. And then all of a sudden, boom, I have a video go viral and I wake up and I've got 30,000 new followers almost overnight. And I was like, oh, I better not screw this up. Like, there's a bigger force at work here.
We're going to have to talk about what video that was. I want to watch that video.
It was right at the beginning. I was like, this is how it's actually spot on. There's nothing about it that was inaccurate. I was like, this is how the virus works. This is the research I found.
It was about all that. Okay. Gotcha.
And like, this is what's, I assume people would listen, but they didn't. It's been a battle. It's been like a war.
I've witnessed some of it from afar and I applaud you and everybody watching. Please like and share this video for both of us. But I mean, I know Dr. Tyna, like, she really, I can see the amount of work that she does behind the scenes, and I know the research and how much it takes energy wise, and not to mention to live the rest of your life to do these things. So please share this with other people so she gets more exposure. That's really what this is about creating more community. So
thank you. You know, and I've been coaching over 100 doctors through this. In their business to get them through and not go bankrupt. And I mean, it's been a crazy push, you know? And so I'm like firing on all levels, trying to help my profession, trying to help my doctors, trying to help, you know, my coaching clients, trying to get it all done. And it's like, whenever someone gives me any grief, I'm like, well, what are you doing? You know, like, how are you being helpful to the community at large? Right.
Or anybody besides yourself.
Right. I ask everyone that. I ask everyone to think about that every day. What can you do, big or small, to support somebody local? To what is it that we can do? Because humans are in trouble right now. And I feel very strongly that there was some universal consciousness, call it God, call it whatever, but like, I'm supposed to be here doing this. So I was supposed to go through all that so I could be here and have this knowledge base and share this. And all of us are, you know, and you showed up early on the scene and you were so supportive of me in my posts. And I was like, every time you chimed in, I was like, thank you. It was just like a calm, peaceful, kind statement each time, which, and so many of you guys on here who follow me send me the most awesome DMs, and it like keeps, it's really the only reason I can keep going is because I have support, right? It's a community. This is like, we're all in this.
100%.
We got to get through it.
Yeah. And that was really kind of what I just, one day, I was one evening, I was just sitting down. I think I had just finished reading or watching some video, and I was just like, why don't I just start this and just start doing this just to help people like yourself and help other people that are watching, like, just gain knowledge that is not readily available. And even if it is available, it's not very interpretable. So, yeah. I mean, this is so incredibly valuable. And like I said before, I really, really appreciate it. And everybody, thank you again for all your comments, and I'm really loving all the appreciation. And we have someone from Uganda watching right now, so that is awesome. And thank
Yeah.
you guys so much.
I've got a guy who messages me every morning a prayer or an inspirational quote or a video. He's Indian, he's from India,
Mhm.
and he sends me something amazing every single day that is so inspiring, and I don't even know where he came from. And I've got several people like that,
Yeah,
but I mean, this guy just out of nowhere, I'm like, what a gift, like what,
yeah,
and from all over the world. I just think it's incredible what social media has created for us. Like,
yeah.
isn't it? So it's like
It's
pen pals
so
on
cool.
crack.
Right? It's so cool. It really is. I mean, and like anything else, it's how you use it. But I mean, I think when used appropriately, like you were just talking about, it is absolutely beautiful. So,
Yeah, it's
um,
great.
I do want to shift a little bit, even though I'm really enjoying talking about this. But I do want to touch on mindfulness a little bit.
All
And
right.
what does mindfulness mean to you?
You asked me that the other day. I am such a total scatterbrain that it's, hi, Sansa. Here's my coyote dog. Come here. You want to be
Oh
on?
yeah, I was gonna say I
There
definitely
she
want to see that.
is. Yeah, this is my, oh, you're so muddy. Oh, no.
Okay,
We live on 40 acres. So she,
is loving it.
oh, yeah,
I can't see her yet. I don't know why it zoomed in a little. Oh, there we go. Oh wow, you are beautiful.
she's
Like
such
I
a,
said, oh, she's all dirty. I love it.
she's all dirty. She's all muddy. Um, So mindfulness, I have a really hard time sitting still, and I think back in the day they would have called me ADD. I was diagnosed as hyperkinetic back when I was a child, and I was actually told by a really cool doctor not to eat any white foods, which I thought was brilliant advice. And I still share that with my patients. What are you
Hmm.
doing, muddy girl? Oh my gosh, you're muddy. Um, she has a best friend on the farm who lives, it's my fiance's mother's dog, who's a black lab, and they wake up every morning. Lucy comes over and barks. I let Sansa out, and they go for a few hours, and they get into trouble, and they chase coyotes, and they get muddy, and it's chaos. Anyway, so I have found that I do better with movement. So my mindfulness comes when I'm moving, and I
Hmm.
am I am totally okay with that. Like, my ADD is my mad genius, and I am good with it. I can multitask like a demon. So I make sure that I do it. I'm very mindful when I move, and it might just be my lollygagging walks where I space out and walk around and have that time, or I might be,
Yeah.
doing kettlebell snatches with a very heavy bell above my head, and it's all hands on deck. Like, I need to be very cognizant of what I'm doing or I'm going to die. So, or deadlifting heavy weight. I really love heavy lifting. Like, there's something very calming for me and very
Hmm.
centering when I lift heavy. Sitting still, I do okay in the sauna. I do okay in the hyperbaric chamber, but usually, to be honest, I fall asleep when I'm trying to be still and mindful. I just nod off, and
Hmm.
I used to think that was a weakness, and now I just let myself have it. To me, I think I just need rest.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think more than anything, I have a really strong connection with animals, and it's gotten stronger since I moved out to the country, and I don't have all the noise. I didn't realize it. I mean, I always knew it, but I didn't realize it to the degree. I hear a lot of people's energy, and it's really loud. And I had been living in the suburbs, in cul-de-sacs, or in the city, in big buildings, apartment buildings with tons of other people for so long, for my entire life, that now I'm out here with no one around, and it's quiet. And my
Yeah.
head, it's like I can finally get the hits from the universe, and they make sense. Instead of them kind of scattering me or causing me anxiety, I can actually listen. And a lot of it comes through communication with animals. I have been saying for years and years and years that as a species, we are going to severely regret our disconnect of symbiosis from other species.
Yeah.
We treat other species on this planet like they are below us, and we do not, it's like so Star Wars, like they do not understand, humans do not understand the symbiotic relationship, that we're killing off apex predators, we're doing all kinds of horrible things. And
Yeah.
and if this really did come from a bat, it's because we encroached on their terrain where we shouldn't have, and look where we are now with viruses that shouldn't have jumped species that fast. So, and
Yeah.
who knows where it came from? But if it really did come from where they say, that shouldn't have happened in any kind of, like, that kind of jump of species is unheard of. So
Hmm.
we we really, I think being, people are really into nature in my profession. We're naturopathic doctors and they're like, oh, go out in
Yeah.
nature, which I'm really into nature too, but I'm far more interested in the critters around me. So like
Hmm.
communing with the critters. And so I have this bald eagle that screams at me often throughout the day. And there's two of them, but one of them always screams at me. And as I get closer, it screams at me more. And people don't believe me until they see it happen. And they're like, oh, wow, he
Yeah.
really is talking to you. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's kind of my mindfulness is like I know that I'm in a good flow state when the animals are talking to me.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I mean, I totally agree with you. I think we are one with nature, whether it's being outside in the rainforest or talking to animals or being with animals, like you're saying. I mean, that's all mindfulness, and you just have to find what works for you. Whatever brings you into the moment more deeply that's mindfulness. And again, there's whether it's a walking meditation or sitting and like as if you are on a cloud, whatever works for you is what works for you. And I think if like you said, you're someone that would just doze off, if you said, then that doesn't work for you. Or
Yeah.
maybe you just need to get more sleep. But one way
Yeah.
or another, you just have to find what works for you. There is no right way to be mindful as long as it brings you closer to the present moment.
Yes.
And that's how I view things, anyways.
Yes, and breathing. I think I was always such a reactive creature. There was a lot of abuse in my past. My parents were amazing, but I had a very abusive sister, and I, when I finally owned that and was like, oh, I was abused, it
Hmm.
sort of made me realize all the other personality traits I had. I think getting older has helped quite a bit, of course, but that ability to pause and breathe, like that's my mindfulness. The fact that I can pause and not just react. The
Hmm.
fact that I can take a breath and be like, okay, and then I can do a couple breathing techniques and get myself centered and realize and get myself out of that chronic sympathetic fight or flight, which I lived in for
Hmm.
years. I mean, that's why I got so sick. I just lived there. But to be able to breathe and pause and then just acknowledge, like, oh, I'm triggered, right? And then take a few more breaths and say, why am I triggered? Like, what is happening right now? Because I firmly believe if you are triggered, it's because somebody's holding a mirror up to you. There's
Hmm.
something that you don't want to see that you're being forced to see.
Hmm.
And we all do it. And as well as I do, especially on social media, like people come at me all the time. And I'm just like, yo, this is your shit. Like,
Yep.
I don't know how else to give it back to you, but like, I acknowledge you, I honor you, but like, this is your,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I mean, what
No.
can I
Yeah.
do about it,
100%.
right? But to be
Yeah.
able to just pause, I know that sometimes people see me be reactive, but I am so much calmer than I used to be, and it's crazy. I'm actually really good in an emergency too, so this has kind of been a nice test of my skills.
Nice. Well, yeah. I mean, in that respect, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and then just being able to pause and breathe. That's huge. That was a big
Yeah.
lesson for me.
Yeah, breathing is very important. I talk to my patients about that, especially being a dentist. I mean, people are obviously always nervous or mostly nervous when they come to see me, or any dentist for that matter. But really working on breathing is extremely important because that's directly connected to our nervous system.
Hmm.
And when you slow down your breathing and you are present and focus on your breathing, it really does calm you down.
Yeah.
It does work. So if you're ever in a situation that is definitely something to focus on is your breath.
Yes.
Definitely.
For me, honestly, because I need movement, and my fiance's so cute, he's always acknowledged this about me. I'll look at him. I'm a flight, like, there's the freeze, flight,
Hmm.
I fly. I'm like, I'm out. Like, the minute things are going down and get too heavy, I'm like, I got to move. And it's not that I'm trying to run away. It's just, I literally have to move. Like, I kinetically have to get the energy out of me. So I'll either
Hmm.
bounce or shake or do some kind of Qigong thing. But usually I'll walk. I'll be like, time to go for a walk. And like right now, not in 5 minutes, like gotta go right now.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I'll start hauling away from the house or down the street or whatever. And I immediately start with my breathing technique. And it's 4 breaths in, 8 breaths out, 4 breaths in, 8 breaths out. When I start to calm down, I can hold for 4 and then I can hold on the exhale. And
Hmm.
it's not until I get that pattern dialed that I come back.
Hmm.
So That's my
No, that's
mindfulness,
true.
like get out of the panic mode because I need to move. And I think just acknowledging that kinetic need is huge. And so for anyone listening, if you're a mover and a shaker, don't be ashamed of it. We live in a society that tells you to sit down and hold still. And
Hmm.
that's just not how some of us process trauma. If you look at animals, when they go through like a massive stressor, like maybe
Hmm.
they were being chased by a predator or something happened, they literally lay on the ground and convulse. They shake. They just literally go into shakes. And it looks really weird when you're watching it. It looks like a seizure, but
Yeah.
they're literally like off gassing the anxiety and the energy and all those hormones that just rush through them. And so, allowing ourselves to figure out what we need to best uh, calm ourselves and self-soothe, I think is also, to me, mindfulness,
Yes,
because it's
absolutely.
different for all of us.
100%. Um, so thank you for that. I think that was very helpful for people. And one thing I do want to point out that you were talking about with your breathing, is that when you do work on breathing, you want to try and make sure that your exhales are longer than your inhales. So
Yeah.
that is something that's very important for anybody that is experimenting with breathing techniques. And again, always feel free to reach out. I'm happy to be a resource for anything that I can. Um,
Quick tip that I did, I bought a little fancy thing that you breathe out through. It's like a whistly type thing, but then I
mhm.
lost it. So I just use a straw. So I breathe in through my nose and I breathe out through the
Oh,
straw. In through my nose, out through the straw.
very cool.
It works great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a technique in a breathing technique in yoga called the Ujjayi breath, which is kind of like constricting your throat to make almost like a straw with your throat to
Mm.
slow the exhales. So that works too. Definitely, I would advise people to experiment with those for sure. Um, so I want to talk about a few more things that I think are really important for people to understand. One of the posts that you've made, you spoke about something called the secret to health, and you go on to say that there's no secret, and you use the analogy of a bank account making deposits and withdrawals and things like that. So can you explain that a little bit more for people?
Sure. It is, your health, in my opinion, is very much like a bank account. And I know a lot of people have used that analogy, and
Hmm.
it's something that resonates with me because you can't just keep extracting from it, right? You can't just keep pulling funds out because you eventually will end up in the red, and it's like a credit card almost, right? You will end up in the red, but you just can't keep pulling on it or you're going to fall over and bonk, hit the wall, die, who knows. And I think that we're such a society of take, and we really take our health for granted. And so making sure that we make those deposits, and again, it's different for each person. There are the bases that we talked about earlier, like sleep, movement, mindfulness, nutrition, healthy relationships. I really cannot emphasize enough how healthy relationships are critical to this, because
Yeah.
who you spend your time with not only impacts you psychologically, you will become those people, and their microbiome significantly impacts yours. And
Yeah.
so, which is crazy, I know it sounds like, but there are so many studies on this in animals that it's true.
Yeah.
So yes, we need to make those deposits on the daily. It's just active work. Some call it self-care. I just call it active work. It's just the things I have to do so that I don't hurt, or I don't have, chronic GI issues, or I don't have chronic pain, or I don't have
Hmm.
depression. And then I take the withdrawals, and some things are very costly. Anger is very costly. Lacking sleep is very costly. Eating junk food for me is very costly. It depends on how well your mitochondria are working and how, overall your resiliency and your vitality are. But in naturopathic medicine, we talk a lot about vitality. It's just kind of your overall status of things.
Hmm.
And you everybody has a different level of vitality for different reasons. Mine is exceptionally high in my heart, but physically I don't always get to outwardly express what I want to do.
Hmm.
My body doesn't always match my ambition because I have a lot of ambition, but my body has been through the ringer. And so really just being cognizant, are you making the appropriate deposits, and is it matching the withdrawals, or hopefully the withdrawals are
Yeah.
less.
Yeah, exactly. You
So
want to be in the green,
yes, you want to be in the
at least
green.
breaking even, but preferably in the green.
Yeah, and there's times, I'll drink a little too much wine and I'm like, oh, that was costly. Or,
Hmm.
we all have our vices. I'm not a saint either. Somebody
Yeah.
the other day was like, I'm shocked to see that you drink alcohol. And I'm like, what's it to you, lady? I mean, I have my vices too, I just choose them wisely.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah.
and I don't have a lot of bandwidth, especially as I age. My fiance's so robust. I mean, he can really burn it at all ends, and he just doesn't feel it at all. He just gets up at 5:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock and goes to work like it's nothing. Whereas I'm laying there dying, like, oh, I ate French fries and I feel so sick, you know. Oxidative stress is I can't do
Yeah.
it. And I'm not making it up. Like, I had some gluten in a meal the other day when I went out, and I was dying all night. I did not sleep a wink. It felt like someone poisoned me, and it was so
Wow.
awful. And he was just like, whoa, you're not kidding. That morning he was kind of joking with me because I won't use his toaster. I have my own toaster. And he was like, oh, you and the toaster thing. And I'm like, dude, you don't want to see it if it's an accidental gluten. Like, it's not fun. And then it happened that night, ironically. And he was just like, oh man, that was not good for you. So I think
Yeah.
so we can't always choose. And sometimes people will upset us or
Hmm.
stress us. And those are withdrawals that we can't always control. But, trying to just balance your checkbook.
Yeah, absolutely. And following up with that, I mean, you had another post, a quote actually that says, "Your health is your personal responsibility."
Yeah.
So, and I completely agree, and I've told that to I don't even know how many people. But do you feel that most people tend to victimize themselves rather than being accountable?
I think it's a cultural thing because I've been hearing from people all over the world during this entire course of this situation, like on the front lines. I am getting
Hmm.
intel. I feel like I am in a unique position in that I have been a truth teller from the beginning. And so I've had a lot of people come to my page, and I'm getting messages from all over the world, like stuff I wish all the authorities were hearing, like I feel like I'm in a very unique position in the front row of this. And, in other countries, it just is kind of an understood thing. Like, I've been talking to somebody in Sweden who's in the government sharing data with me.
Hmm.
They're doing quite well, actually. This is actually working the way their strategy, and there's numbers. But they're like, we're just different. Like, they have a different work ethic.
Yeah.
And that work ethic bleeds over into their ethic around how they treat their bodies.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just a very much a cultural thing. And I
Yeah.
don't think I don't want to blame people in the US. I feel like the government has done a great job, and so has the food industry, and so has big agriculture and big pharma, in really taking people's autonomy, fear training us. They've been fear training us since 9/11 really well.
Oh yeah.
And just sort of making it a pill for every ill scenario, and people bought in. People buy in. I posted a thing today. If you guys aren't following me, please do, and go check out the post I made today. It was a social
Hmm.
experiment, and it's a really interesting video, and I won't give it away, but like that, I remember seeing that, and it just has haunted me for years since I saw it, because socially humans are just very much pack and herd animals, and
Yeah.
for good reasons, which I explained in the post. But they've given up their autonomy around their health, and
Oh yeah.
it's just mind blowing. Like, I got
Yeah.
into practice. I remember being a few years into practice, and I remember calling my mom crying, and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I worked so hard and spent so much money to find the answers to help people, and no one gives a shit, Mom. No one cares." And it wasn't popular like it is now. Like, you've come in at a really great time, Seth, because like this is all known. But I mean, this was back when, you mentioned that, you know, your diet might have something to do with your longevity, and people would be like, oh, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Even in the chiropractic college,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
being taught that like people's really disabling conditions like rheumatoid arthritis had nothing to do with their diet. And I was like, are you guys on crack? Are you like, what are you talking about? So I just think that it's not new information, but at this point in time, I believe there are no excuses, because this information is readily available and it is
Hmm.
free. So many doctors like yourself and myself have taken to the internet to share content all day long, selflessly. And there's just no more excuses for intentional ignorance anymore. It comes
Yeah.
down to choosing to be better.
Yeah. And like we were talking about earlier at the very beginning, that discipline and accountability. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, even if you can't, even if for whatever, even if you don't have a computer or internet at home, like there's a library, there are resources for you to reach out to different places to gain this information, or find people like yourself that are out there giving this information. And then even if someone finds something that they think might be questionable, there are other resources to go and check on these things. Just accepting what somebody blindly tells you, especially when they have a vested interest in what they are telling you, is not the brightest thing you can do. So again, I really really appreciate you doing the things you do, because I think that accountability leads to empowerment. And
That's exactly it. Like, that's all I've been trying to do is empower people. And I've
yeah,
taken it doesn't matter what I post. Somebody comes at me and calls me, you're not including people of color. You're not considering socioeconomics. You're not, and I'm like, dude, I have like 400
you are one
words.
person. Yeah. You're not a
It's a
news
little
station.
post. It's just a little post.
Yeah.
Like, I can only fit so much. And all the posts tell a story where I have talked about all of these things. I can't put a disclaimer in every post that is all inclusive to everyone and solves all the world's problems all at once in a
Yeah.
400 word post. So I have a free book. I have over
Yeah,
100
I know.
something podcast episodes. All this stuff is free. I have so much free stuff out there, you guys. I have so many free videos where I was on things like this on other people's podcasts, other people's Instagrams, and where I interview a ton of people. Like, the information is out there and it's free, and it's in audio form, it's in written form, it's in, video form. So there's something for everyone, really. It's just a matter of, it's hard to learn, right? Wouldn't you agree? Like, learning can be hard, and it takes discipline and
100%. But it's very
decipher.
rewarding too.
It is, because it takes discipline. Like, there's times when I'm looking at a study and I'm just like, oh, geez, this is so hard to comprehend. And I've got to take notes, and I've got to go back and like look up words and go highlight things and come back to them. And I put together these crazy Post-it notes all over the place, all for hours, you guys, for hours and hours and hours to synthesize it into a 400 word post. And then someone's like, you're racist, you're entitled. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like,
I know what you mean.
It's data. Like, this is just data. Like, I'm trying.
It's so, because you put in the time, whether it's schooling or a social issue, whatever it is. Not only to like kind of just see and remember what something or somebody said, but to actually understand it.
Yes.
And then convey that to other people. And then people just kind of reduce it to some oversimplification that has nothing to do with what you were actually even talking about or what the real message is. But again, like you said, that just shows where they're at.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Everybody's on their own journey. It is what it is. And I honestly applaud you, because I know you take a lot of heat and on all different ends, and good for you, because I think it's beautiful what you're doing. So
thank you. I think this would kill most mortals. Truly, I wake up every morning and I'm just like, okay, here we go. Let's go into the DMs. Let's see what we got, And I have to really talk about mindfulness. I have to really prepare myself and put up my energetic armor, but also be open and penetrable to the love, and, not dismiss it. And because I get a lot of love, I get a ton of love, but there's just really, I get a lot of messages. Hey, I really need to, convince my family of what you're saying. Is there a website where I could go read what you're talking about? And I'm like, this is called lifetime synthesis. This is called expertise. This is a lifetime of synthesis of information to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And my entire life, I've been a scientist. You'll love this. When I was a little kid, I used to find dead animals or dead birds, and I would bury them in the backyard and then dig them.
Oh my God, I did the same thing. Oh my God, that's so crazy.
I would dig them up and look at their bones and like try to rearticulate them. And my mom was like, she's going to be a doctor or a serial killer. I'm not really sure.
Oh my God, I did the same thing. Like I had pet hamsters. Oh God, we won't even go there.
Yeah. It's a little morbid, but I was just so interested. So I've been a scientist from day one, and I've surrounded myself with scientists, and I know some of the smartest people in the world, you guys. And smart finds smart, right? We found each other. Like, smart people find each other. And this is really happening. Like, what we're talking about is really going on, and we're trying to synthesize information. And we're so grateful for everyone who is getting on board. I'm just so excited because so many of my followers are like, I read all your stuff and I go look it all up. Like, I may not understand it, but I'm getting better at it. They're getting better at it. They're learning to unpack the studies and dig through it. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, and then they send me all kinds of cool stuff. They're like, look what I found. And, what do you think? And it's super cool. It's like, that's how we learn, right? We'd be open to, and I follow accounts I can't stand. I follow political accounts that I'm right in the middle. So like, I follow the extreme of both sides. I follow the extreme of scientists. I listen to doctors that I'm just like, they're like, food has nothing to do with it. And I'm like, oh, this is so hard for me to ingest, but how boring would it be if we all agreed? Like,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
true
know.
too.
I don't know anyone on the planet that I 100% agree with, including my dog.
Yeah.
There's just no one. And I have friends and family who are far extreme from me, and we've all had to learn to live together. So
Yeah.
that's called being a human being, right? Like that's called synthesis
Yeah.
and just being open to learning, because that's the only way to survive.
Yeah, I mean, we're human beings are knowledge seekers, and I think that that is something that is innate within us all. And the more you kind of do that, the more alive you kind of become. At least that's how I felt. I'm always I'm that kind of defines a very large part of me. I'm always a knowledge seeker. And I try to stay off social media because I it's just like you can get caught in that.
Yeah.
And I try to limit myself doing it in the car to and from work, and that's where I get a lot of like the videos going and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I love it. That's
all right,
good. That's how it is.
yes,
That's why we
yes,
buried dead animals and dug them up later.
and played with chemistry sets in my parents'
Oh,
bathroom and blew up things.
yeah.
Anyways,
When I was in fifth grade, I bought a microscope from the neighbor at a garage sale for 50 cents, and I was so
oh
excited.
wow,
And I immediately took all the glass slides that came with it. It was an old used one, and there was just a few glass slides. And I immediately started crushing all the insects I could find and looking at them under the microscope, just crushed, right? And my mom was like, "Tina, you could just put them on the slide dead and look at them." And I'm like, "But they're already dead, so who cares?" And I mean, it's so morbid to think about, but yeah,
hmm
this goes deep.
yeah, it does. So I think I don't remember exactly what time I had to restart this, so I don't know if we're going to get cut off in a few minutes.
We
But
might.
I do have a few other questions for you.
Okay.
I don't know how you're doing on time.
I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good.
So if it once it starts giving me this countdown, I might just go back out and come back in for a few minutes because I do want to get to these few more
Oh,
questions for
okay.
everybody. Um, so a few things that we've mentioned so far are rest and sleep
Yeah.
for our well-being. So how important is rest and sleep in a abbreviated way? Because I know that's a huge topic. And then also, if you could touch on is there a difference between the two?
I think that sleep is just absolutely everything. It's my favorite thing to do in the whole world. So it's always been my favorite thing to do in the whole world. And I can't emphasize it enough. Your body just literally goes into complete disarray and destruction when you don't sleep enough. So that's key.
hmm
Rest, I do think, is different. I allow myself a lot of rest. It's interesting. One of my colleagues the other day that coaches with me said, "You have produced so much content and you've done so much since this pandemic started, just business wise. I mean, even just for the doctors I coach and in that world of business and marketing, I've done so much." And it's true. I have. I mean, when I actually sat down and thought about what she said, I was like, wow. And I started listing it out. I was like, I have done a lot.
Yeah.
But you know what? If people saw how much I laid around and like just rested, truly just laid
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
and rested constantly, I rest a lot in between sets, if you will.
Yeah.
So I think it might just be 5 minutes of closing my eyes. I have to go lay down every single day and take a short nap, or sometimes I just lay quietly. Maybe that might be my mindfulness, but yeah,
Yeah.
rest is key. And it's whenever you have an autoimmune disease, or I had an ER nurse reach out to me last night I've been talking to through this whole situation, and she's really at her wit's ends. And she had to admit one of the ER docs for suicide attempt. I mean, the doctors are,
Wow.
the healthcare workers are struggling, you guys. This is not going to go well in the next few months.
Yeah.
A lot of PTSD and exhaustion. She was just diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And I was like, man, your body is screaming for you to rest.
hmm
And that, you guys, sometimes that rest takes years. So take every opportunity during lockdown to rest. That's what I've been doing. I've been training and eating well and resting. Like, I'm like, this is like my regroup time. I'm not taking it as, I'm not happy about it, but I'm not taking it as like, oh no. I'm like, all right, let's train and get stronger and let's sleep a lot. Cause it doesn't matter how much you train or exercise. If you're not, the real magic is in the rest and in the recovery. So
Yeah. You got it.
actively, it's a job.
Yeah, no, 100%. You got to play the cards that you're dealt. I mean, and I've been saying this to everybody that I know
Yeah.
since the start of this, that if you have not taken advantage of your time and started working on your health, this is a better time than any time in your lifetime that you will ever have to do so.
Yeah.
And we've had time. It's been months.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and if you haven't started for whatever reason and you're watching this, please start. I mean,
Yeah.
just start doing something. And the things that you just said, eating well, movement, and rest are like I can't. And one of the reasons why I asked is because sleep is so important for our healing. I mean, that is when your body is actually regenerating.
Yeah.
It is so, so, so important. So
It's
please
everything.
make sure you do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
It's like a non-negotiable. I think it's more important than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Another thing that we've seen a lot of are fear, stress, and anger. So how does fear, stress, and anger impact our health?
It's devastating. Anger immunosuppresses you for hours and it inflames you for hours. So if you're walking around chronically angry or you're in a relationship with someone who you get in fights with all the time in your household, you are walking around immunosuppressed and chronically inflamed, which
Mm-hmm.
is exactly what this virus wants. It makes you a perfect host for infection, high viral titers. So, yeah, anger leads to the dark side. It's all Yoda.
I just made a post about Yoda last week, so go
Yes.
check that out, guys.
I've been watching a lot of Star Wars because I'm like, I have to. Like, that's what's keeping me sane right now. And I mean, Yoda is spot on. Last
Hmm.
night I was watching The Empire Strikes Back, and Luke's like, I'm not afraid to train Yoda, and Yoda's like, you will be. I was
Yeah,
like, yep. When you start
yeah,
digging into, you just said now is the best time to get healthy, but that journey is not for the meek. It can bring its own sets of enlightenment to you. So, yes. And then fear is a hardwired response into the amygdala and limbic system, which are like the lizard parts of our brain, the ancient
hmm,
parts of our brain. And so there is not a lot of rhyme or reason to it. There's not a lot of talk therapy that helps it. It is right in. Neuroplasticity is this concept of where if you seek out dopamine enough, which is a whole other conversation, but really it's your like neurotransmitter of addiction.
hmm.
When you get the hits that you're looking for, whether it's sex, gambling, alcohol, social media, likes on the thing, we're watching these hearts go up and it's like dopamine, right? And
Yeah.
so we are dopamine seekers. That's how we stay out of trouble as human beings, as mammals.
Hmm.
And the dopamine people are getting right now is that fear. It's that they turn on the media and it's fear. I mean, I don't even watch TV. I haven't watched TV
Me
for
either.
years. I have no idea what the news stations even look like anymore. And it's just fear. It's fear hits every night. Get your fear hits. And then that's hard. It's now hardwired. The more dopamine you get down a pathway, you hardwire that neuroplasticity gets hardwired into certain regions and you create these patterns in your brain that are now hardwired into that amygdala and limbic system. And basically it's PTSD. It's basically the same thing that happens with PTSD, and that is a very difficult thing to get out of. Getting
I didn't think about it like that. Yeah.
that is the same. I mean, when I tried to put it together and like, how can I explain this? And I still haven't figured out how to explain it into a 400-word post, but I want to do a whole podcast on it. But that's what's happening. We're 10 months in, so we are hardwired into that fear narrative. So the people who are freaking out right now, you can't change them. They are now there. So for all of you listening who are like, but what about my husband and my family? And you can't talk sense into them. This isn't even about
Yeah.
logic anymore. There's no verbal centers of the brain that are going to tap into that place. The only thing that impacts that area is exercise, movement, music, art therapy, drumming, rhythmic
Creativity.
beats. Yes, that's how you tap into that part of the brain. That's also the part of the brain where trauma is stored. So when my mentor died, I couldn't speak about him without crying. Like I literally couldn't think of him without falling to tears. And one of my patients, who is a therapist, she said, look, that part of the brain is not accessible with cognitive speech therapy. Like there's no point in you going to talk it out. Like it's never
Hmm.
going to help. That will never help. At some point, that trauma will make its way out to the part of the brain where the speech centers
Yeah.
are. But for right now, it's in the lizard brain. She said, you need to move. So I got on my Pilates reformer and I was moving. I was doing like a routine I knew that was, hardwired into me because I'd done it so many times. And she said, now talk about him. And I could talk about him without any tears whatsoever.
Wow.
So we are now a society on a global level hardwired into a fear narrative that's giving us our addictive hits. And that's where we're at.
Yeah, and this is just one facet of that. I mean, there's same thing with like the way people eat. I mean, like somebody is so stuck in the way they do whatever it is. Eating is just one example, but and I was just talking to one of the girls at the office about this the other day. You cannot change people once they've reached this point. You cannot change people. It's not your job to change them either.
Mm-mm.
By the way, you're just going to stress yourself out more worrying about what they're not even worrying about.
Yeah.
And the best thing that I believe and what I tell people to do is to live your truth and
Yep.
to enjoy and love every moment of what you're doing. And hopefully that inspires other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you can do. You're not going
Yes.
to convince anybody of something they don't want to be convinced of. So really don't try. I mean,
Yes.
you can give them some information and things like that, but I mean, whether or not they read it or want to go further with it is totally up to them. And you're not going to be able to capitalize on that other than being an inspiration yourself. So,
Yep. It's like taking away an addict's addiction. You don't
yeah.
walk up to a heroin addict and say, "You can't do heroin anymore. Here's no support. Goodbye." Like
Yeah.
that's where it's at. Like it's that driven. So no, you're absolutely right. And I'll just on a tip on that, every single day, whether it's a call, it happened today with a colleague, and no disrespect to any of these people, but every single day somebody will come at me and say, this just happened over on Facebook and I got reamed a new one and had a big fight, or I posted your video over on Facebook to try to get this community of people to hear. They're using my content as their ammo to convince people, which is not, you cannot change people's minds, you guys. Like you cannot change people. What, anyway, sorry,
That's
my
okay.
battery's getting low. But I was like, get off Facebook. Like just get off the platform. It is just a place where people want to argue. Instagram's a little bit like that, but there's something about Facebook and the way that it's set up. It just allows for that people to just fight. And it's like, why would you do that? Why would you go into the fold to fight with when you know that you're going to fight? Like, you know, there's times when I post things and I know I'm going to just take a barrage of bullets, but it needs to be said. It's not that I'm just trying to pick a bone or whatever, but like because I am on this planet to tell the truth, but like just pick your battles wisely, especially right now, and get rid of the dead weight. Like get rid of the people who disrupt your harmony.
That's exactly what I was going to lead into is some of the simple ways to reduce stress, because that's, I mean, I've talked about this, I don't even know how many times, and just about everybody I've had on has mentioned it too, that stress is one of the largest factors in health.
Yes.
So what would you say, like you just said, cutting dead weight or removing toxic people from your life? I mean, and what are some other ways to reduce stress?
I had to plug my phone into power, so now I'm not on.
Oh, okay.
I hope the audio is okay.
Yeah, no, it's perfect.
A few years ago came to the reality that, and call this, you know, being 40. There's something magical that happens around 40 where you're just like, oh, I do not give a shit anymore. This is great. This is like the blessing of middle age. And it just gets better as you get older. It just occurred to me that are any of these people going to show up at my funeral that give me grief? No. Are they supporting me financially in any way? Are they buying my stuff? Are they in any way, shape, or form having any impact on my family's well-being financially? No. Then why the F am I listening to them? Right? And I'm just like,
yeah, exactly.
So I made this rule that if somebody disrupts my peace more than 3 times, they're out. It's over. And some would say, well, you need to work on yourself and your triggers. Yes. And I am actively doing that. And I do that on the daily because that's part of being a grown-up is aging well into that and really coming to terms with like, I'm a different person than I was 10 years ago. And you know what I mean? But yes, but it still doesn't matter. Sometimes those are my triggers. Correct. Sometimes it is me. Sometimes that person just grates me and I don't understand. And it happens here on Instagram all the time. There's some people that just chime in constantly on my DMs. They don't mean any malevolence, but they just aggravate the crap out of me with their little negativity and their little like bites and comments that are just like, I don't need this. Like, I don't need it. And so at this point, it's just like, I just block. And it's love and light to them, but like they're raining on my parade and I'm on a mission. I'm trying to help human beings right now. So I just had a colleague come down on me and I was just like, dude, you just there's no more conversation being had ever again. Like, that's it. No more. Like, you are fired permanently. And I don't mean to sound so crass, but like, I just don't have the bandwidth to sit there and process like, well, should I continue to work on this or should I have a conversation with them? And it's just like, is there any upside?
That's such a waste of energy.
No.
That debate,
no, just, you know, especially when they cross the line and they start accusing you of stuff that's not true. So that's when I'm just like, you're fired and you're out and that's it. And I firmly believe that it's dead weight. There's dead weight out there and they may be somebody else's like life raft and they may be dead weight to you and that is okay.
Yeah.
I don't need everyone to like me, and I don't like everyone, and I am okay with that. And that has actually come through mindfulness. I mean, it's just become very, it's like realizing that you're not the best doctor for everyone, and they're not the
Hmm.
best fit for you, right? And that's just called like putting your ego aside and saying, okay, people be like, I don't like you. I'm like, great. Like,
And
zero, yeah,
I mean,
like
you're not
zero
everybody.
skin
You're
off.
not going to get along with everybody. I mean, it's so true. I mean,
No,
really, really is.
no,
And
and
again,
people,
it's go
or
ahead.
they disagree, and they're like, I disagree, I'm unfollowing. I'm like, thank you for announcing it. Like, what?
I mean, all that really is a call for attention. To be perfectly honest, I mean, and again, like I said before, everybody's in their place in their journey, and hopefully, some people will come to realize that the things that they do are not necessary, and that actually being open to other people's opinions is really what this is all about. I
Yeah,
mean, that's one of the greatest lessons we can learn is to actually communicate effectively with one another. And the best way to learn how to do that is to talk to people that you don't necessarily agree with.
yes,
So
yes.
it's really, really important.
And
Um,
understanding where they're coming from because they feel fervently that they're correct, and it's like, okay, well, let's talk. That's how we learn. I mean,
if we
that's
all
how
agreed and said the same things, what are we learning? What changes are happening?
it's
I
so.
mean,
Oh, shoot, sorry, I took a screenshot. It's so
it's
dangerous
all
too
good.
that at the academic level that's not being encouraged anymore, because I'm
Yeah.
the reason I loved college. I remember when I graduated from naturopathic school, and I really didn't always jive with everybody there. And I remember my last shift, my friend Sonia Fung, who's a brilliant naturopathic doctor in Palm Springs, she said, so what did you learn? Like, what's your big take home? And I said, I learned tolerance, Sonia. I learned
Hmm.
tolerance. I learned to sit through two medical programs, one being very liberal and one being very conservative, two very different programs at the same time. One was all men and one was all women. And I learned to listen to people that I did not agree with and learn to synthesize that information and learn to hear them out without exploding or screaming or claiming that I didn't feel safe or losing my wits. Like, I learned to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that was the best part about higher ed. Like, and we're
I mean,
losing
that's
that.
growth.
Yeah.
That's how you grow. Learning to be comfortable in an uncomfortable scenario or multiple uncomfortable scenarios.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And know that these people are your colleagues, and it's happening currently. I've got a lot of colleagues in the naturopathic profession who disagree with what I'm saying here on Instagram, and in general, they are very pro the narrative. And with all due respect to them, that's fine. But man, they come at me on the regular in sometimes the most passive aggressive ways, and I'm just like, just leave me alone. Like, I'm just doing what I'm doing. Like, I'm speaking my truth as I understand it. I'm not trying to hurt anybody.
I understand being passionate about certain things, but when you're like what you're explaining is like when somebody comes down on you, it's like, how do they think that that's a beneficial way of approaching the situation?
I don't know.
It's a little bit mind boggling to me. And again, that says more about them than it does about you. So I
And
mean,
I'm not afraid. Like, I just want to say that. Like, I'm not afraid of this. I am someone who tends towards pneumonia. I'm someone who tends towards getting hit pretty hard by viruses when other people buzz right through them. I have two parents that I am pretty sure one of them will not make it through this
mhm.
because of their health issues. My daughter has her own set of health issues and lowered vitality. I'm not being crass about this, but I'm also not afraid. And there's nobody who's going to convince me to be afraid. I don't wake up in the morning and go, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to be afraid now. And I know that some people are afraid, and I respect where they're at because, like we mentioned, if you're just coming on, listen to the earlier part of this, but I'm just not. And I feel like a lot of people want me to be. And
Yeah,
they get mad at me for not being afraid. They get
because
just mad,
you're showing them what they could be.
I guess.
I
It's,
mean, I think that's what it comes down to is that you're, and I mean, I might get a lot of crap for saying that, but I mean, you're showing them what's possible outside of themselves, but it is within them. So
yeah.
that's one of the explanations I can come up with, I guess.
Yeah. Because the bottom line is, and I'll just say this without saying too much about it, like this is aerosolized. We've known this from the beginning. I don't know why they didn't say it early on. This whole subfamily of viruses is aerosolized, and this one is no different. It doesn't, it's like if we see a pack of sheep or a herd of sheep and everyone's like, there's a new type of sheep amongst the sheep. And everyone's like, okay, well, it probably is going to behave like a sheep, but we're treating it like it's some kind of crazy lion, like
Yeah.
some kind of alien lion that just landed out of, some alien planet. That, and I'm like, no, it's still a sheep. It's still going to behave that way. So we're talking about an aerosolized nano organism, or it's not even an
Yeah.
organism.
Yeah, I know.
It's going to do what it's going to do.
Yeah. And
So,
it's funny. It's funny because I mean, studying science for the greater portion of my life, you kind of you learn about the trials and tribulations of experimentation with things,
yes.
and most people don't know anything about that. And that's really what this is. This is all experimentation. They don't know where anything is going to go, they might say they have certainty about things that can change very quickly, and it has if you're paying attention. But
Yes.
and
Yes.
I think that's what people really need to realize. It's just there is an unknown factor, just like everything else in life, and there might be multiple unknown factors. But in general, like you just said, this is very similar to the family that it belongs to.
Right. Right. Yes. It's not a complete alien.
Yeah,
Um, it's going to behave somewhat characteristically. It's fecal oral and it's aerosolized. And nobody said this from the beginning. And I tried to say it from the beginning and I took so much slack. That video I made that went viral, I mentioned in there that obesity might be a player in this. And that was based
mm-hmm.
off of what I was reading coming out of China. And of course, duh, like if you're inflamed, right?
Yeah.
No disrespect, but like fat is inflammatory. If you're inflamed, we're going to have a problem. And oh my God, I took so much heat, and the Health at Every Size community came down on me and they were like, you're fat shaming and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, whoa, because I mentioned the word obesity in like a 13-minute video that I
But
said might
isn't
be a player. And it's turned out to be the single
yeah? I mean,
biggest.
again, you're showing somebody, you're triggering somebody with something that affects them, and you're
Right.
showing them something about them. And unfortunately, people are going to take things how they're going to take it. But that's a real thing, and it's actually overwhelmingly common in the United States, unfortunately. And I'm talking about obesity, and I mean it's very unfortunate, and there are reasons for it. It's not just like this. It's not like something fell out of the sky and then magically people just started becoming obese. I mean, this is generations of malnourishment, I guess,
Yep.
is one
That's
of the ways,
exactly.
and traumas
Yep.
that are unresolved and not known how to be dealt with.
And
And
toxins.
yeah, oh yeah, tons of that. And I've dealt with these things in my life as well. I mean, emotional psycho emotional effects of these things. When I was younger, I was overweight. I made a decision. I wanted to play professional soccer, and that completely shifted my entire health journey. So,
Mhm.
and that is kind of, I mean, and I was shifting to a different direction, and that's how I got into medicine, basically. So,
Yep.
ah,
Yeah, I know
um,
it is. My whole family is obese. My entire family except me. And I went the other way. I became just crazy skinny and malnourished and anorexic and bulimic and suffered massive health consequences for
yeah,
it. And just
yeah,
having, I remember being right before that cytomegalovirus hit me, I remember going into the student health center and a male doctor there. I was like crippled with anxiety and I had so much pain and I was begging him for Vicodin and he gave me some yoga moves and I was like, dude, screw you and your yoga moves. Like, give me the drugs because that's where I was at the time. And he told me, he said, if you don't put some healthy weight on, a virus is going to come through and take you out. And that same year, lo and behold, it almost happened. So, yeah, and I was severely underweight. So we just have to stop looking at people and saying, oh, well, they were otherwise healthy. It's like, you know what? Show me their labs and I'll tell you if they were otherwise healthy because just
yeah, and
your body from the outside with clothing on does not tell me anything. I need to look
yeah,
at muscle composition and how much lean muscle mass you have on your body in general, how much fat do you have. I actually put weight on in the past few months because I want to have it as a reserve. Like I want extra fat on me right now because when I do get sick, I tend to waste, like I mentioned earlier. And I got very sick in February and ended up with pneumonia and did have a post viral syndrome for months. I was really not okay. I was exhausted. I had some neurologic stuff going on. I lost a ton of muscle mass. My glutes literally went away. I went from having like, I'm kind of known for having a set of glutes, and it was gone. I just had a pancake booty, and I was like, whoa, this fire, whatever I just dealt with really took a toll on me. I believe I may
Yeah.
have had the one that we may not speak of, but I just, I want a little bit of reserves on me in case I get there. I don't want to wait. You can't waste from nothing. Like I gotta
Yeah.
have something. So
Yeah.
I think it's just being smart about all of this and realize, I mean, I welcome it. I'd rather get it now while it's fall than the dead of winter, you know? So, or,
100%.
or maybe I've already had it. I don't know. I think I get so many messages from people who are so afraid, and I'm like, you're going to have to contend with it.
Yeah. One way or another.
Even if the, you know what comes along that we can't, people are asking about it. We can't talk about
Yeah,
it
I
with
know.
you guys, but, even if it comes along, it's going to be a yearly thing, and it seems to be a double doser. So do you want a double doser every year or do you want to like, which we may not have a choice about the way things are looking, but, or do you want to have robust health so that you can just manage with whatever comes your way, whatever
Hmm.
may come, whatever, there's a lot of other things to be scared of out in the universe as well, besides just this little green monster, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. God, so much to talk about. But I know one thing you did mention is that you said show if you want to see if someone's healthy, show me their labs, and I want to get people to understand. Again, this is a long conversation. We're not going to have time to talk about all of it, but just because somebody's thin or muscular or looks healthy doesn't mean that they are. I mean, there's so many underlying things that we don't know. And that's the beauty of the human body, though. That's how our biology is so well adapted that we can literally ingest and take in all of these crazy toxins and things that we do on a daily basis, intentionally and non intentionally, and our body deals with it.
yeah.
And we're still here. We wake up every day. We're still doing the things that we do. I mean, like you said, there's labs and there's so many layers to that to see if somebody's really healthy, and that's not really being addressed at this point.
Yeah. So inflammation in and of itself is a protective mechanism. It's supposed to be there. And with inflammation comes an increase in ACE2 receptors. And with an increase in ACE2 receptors comes, that's the binding site of the virus. So
Yeah.
this is all actually a protective mechanism. What happens in modern society is it's run rampant. And so people are running around with rampant inflammation without knowing it. Fat cells in and of themselves are quite
Yeah.
pro-inflammatory, and
Absolutely.
little cytokine depots, if you will. And so people are quite, in that case, quite inflamed. But you can have your very thin, skinny person who looks thin, but if you were to do a body comp analysis, they're just all fat and bone. They have no muscle.
Yeah.
They're very inflamed. Those people tend to be more inflamed, and actually being skinny fat or thin on the outside, fat on the inside is far more dangerous for all causes of death than being an obese, metabolically unsound person. So I would take my chances with a little bit of extra weight on me, to be honest with you, than being
Hmm.
underweight and inflamed. And then you have to look at people's history. I lived off of Snapple and cigarettes, like I said, for a long time. Like that did some damage.
Yeah.
There's some cellular issues there. We look at your blood sugar handling. Metabolic flexibility is critical here.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
really important.
it's so important. There's so many things to look at that you have to put together. It's not just as simple as like, hey, Dr. Tyna, can you tell me what labs to run? Sure, I can, but who's going to interpret them for you?
Yeah.
They're
Exactly.
not going to tell you anything. I watch people, like I watch PhD doctors on here try to dismantle labs, and they have no clinical experience. And with all due respect, like they're brilliant people, but I'm just like, until you apply this to an actual human being that you're looking at their whole comprehensive health, these numbers mean nothing. They're
Yeah.
just part of the overall puzzle. I need to put my
Hmm.
hands on the person. I need to feel the turgor of their skin, the
Yeah.
composition of their muscle, the tone, the integrity. How robust are they? When I take their joints and go like this, are they Gumby or are they firm and held together well? So many things to consider here, you guys. And so really overall, for me personally, I'm working on being denser, more robust and resilient physically, mentally, and then, immunologically, and what my labs say. I want them to look, the story of Tyna on paper in the laboratory analysis needs to look sound. And what does
Yeah.
that mean? That it's a lot of things. I run over I mean, dozens. I run dozens of markers. I don't even know
Yeah.
how many. And it
Yeah.
comes together as a picture. So like my best friend from life just sent me her labs the other night. She's like, can you look at my labs? And I'm like, an MD ran these. They ran like little tiny 5 or 6 little things that don't really tell me anything. I need these
Yeah.
other things to put the comprehensive picture together. And she's like, oh, I'll ask him for it. And I'm like, no, he won't run it because
Yeah. Exactly.
he doesn't know how to interpret them. So why would
Yeah.
he? So it's a comprehensive, and people say, well, I'm just going to figure it out myself. I'm like, no, you really should hire somebody who knows what they're doing to analyze your labs for you, because they need to put it together in an entire contextual clinical picture along with physical
So,
exam and history.
so how do you recommend that people go about doing that? Because that I think some people realize that, but they don't know where to go.
Right. I think there's a lot right now in the world. There's so many cool functional health professionals,
Hmm.
and anything from a health coach to a nutritional therapist to, different. There was no functional medicine institute back when I was in school, and now I mean, they were just fledgling. They were just starting, but like, it wasn't as popular, I should say. So we've got all kinds of cool practitioners like yourself who are not traditionally trained in this, who have
Hmm.
sought out extra training. So there's so many options out there. I do realize that it's an investment and not everybody has access to the funds to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I do think that some people need to stay in their lanes. I don't really think health coaches should be running labs and trying to interpret them when they don't have a deep understanding of physiology and anatomy, but some would argue with me on that. And I stand true to that, because it's like, you don't know what you don't know kind of thing, which is a little frustrating when you do know, but I get it. People need access
Yeah.
to things that they can afford. So there are places to start, but I think ultimately just getting a glucose monitor from the drugstore. And I have a post about it. It's a little, you guys can find it. It's a little skull and crossbones made out of sugar if you look for the post, and it tells you exactly how to monitor your glucose. Or you can get a continuous glucose monitor, and I have information on my page about that. But
Hmm.
that kind of information is, shoot, that's like, that continuous glucose monitor is probably the best biohacking. I don't know if you've used one, but like, that told me everything I needed to know about my
Well,
life.
I haven't used one recently, but I mean, I used to volunteer at a diabetes camp, and I got to know how to use these things. So
Yeah.
I use it on myself. I mean, a long time ago, but
2 weeks of
um,
that, 2 weeks of that. And I was like, whoa, I know what I'm doing wrong. So
yeah,
there are ways to access this stuff, and yes, it is a bit of an investment, but it's like it's the best investment you'll ever make in yourself, is getting your health house in order, right?
100%. That is your wealth right there. And I know that's a fancy quote of some sort that I don't remember how it goes, but your health truly is your wealth.
Yeah, it's everything.
Definitely. So I mean, again, there are functional medicine doctors out there. There are naturopathic doctors out there. There are integrative doctors out there, and then they kind of intertwine together. There are Ayurvedic doctors. I mean, I'm happy to be a resource for people. I know you are a resource for people, but please reach out if you do have questions about who to go to, because even again, I don't like saying, but even amongst those groups, there are more. Um,
Knowledgeable.
yeah, I guess knowledgeable is a good way to
Experienced.
put it. Yeah, yes, experience. Yes, experience. That's a
Yes.
very good way to do it. And don't just judge. And even myself included, don't just judge what you think somebody knows based on their social media account, because that's not
Right.
always what it is. So
Yeah, there are a lot of so-called experts who've never even dealt with a patient.
yeah,
And there's also people who deal with patients all day who are not abreast on some of the more current stuff, and that makes none of them wrong. It just means they're different.
yeah,
So it
exactly.
really is up to the person to dig and do. I went through 5 strength and conditioning coaches before I found the one.
Hmm.
That was up to me to find the person who I jived best with, who would give me what I needed, and not overtax my system. And so it's up to each of you. It's not about finding the person who's the cheapest or who happens to be in your town.
Yeah.
You may have to travel, you may have to do telemedicine, you may need to spend some money and invest, and it's not cheap. The better they are, the more expensive they are.
Hmm.
Most of these people don't take insurance, and there's a reason for that. Insurance does not reimburse worth a
Uh
damn,
huh.
and it's the mafia, and no one wants to participate in it. So I'm not in practice anymore, but I was very expensive, and that was because I had a particular skill set that very few possessed, with the knowledge base that I had around it, and I charged appropriately for it. And I'm not bragging. People say, well, it's out of my budget, or it's like, really, is it out of your budget? Or are you just convinced you have to use your insurance? Because if you have the funds, it's
Yeah.
called a credit card. Sometimes we have to put things on credit and pay it off. but that's a great investment. It's probably the best thing you could do. And I'm not discounting it because I know people are losing jobs right now and things are happening that are out of their control.
Oh, it's very real.
It's very real, but it is, if you have the means and you feel like it's something you need to do, I would highly encourage you to figure out a way to do it, because it's priceless information, and having somebody to interpret it for you correctly who has the experience to do so is just, you know, it's
Yeah, and, I
irreplaceable.
mean, a couple of things you said. I mean, first of all, for sure. I mean, this doesn't apply to every industry, but for the most part, in my experience in medicine, you do get what you pay for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, that's unfortunate in some situations, but look, and what we were talking about earlier is even if you, for whatever reason, and I understand, and I've been in this position multiple times in my life too, if you really feel that these things are not accessible to you, there are things that you can do, which we discussed earlier, like mindfulness practices that are free. I mean, getting out and going for a walk,
It's
choosing
free.
to eat things that are healthier for you. I mean, more fruits and veggies. I mean, making that 80% of your diet or more is free.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to buy the food one way or another, but how much you're spending on food, that is proportionally equivalent to how healthy you are.
Yeah.
I mean, like the gas you put in your car. I mean, if you're putting premium gas in your car and you're not putting premium food in your mouth, I mean, you have to work on that part of the equation first
Yep.
before you can really say that it's too expensive for me to go seek a practitioner's help. Because look, if you, first of all, again, this is just my opinion, if you're seeking out a practitioner for this, you know that there's something off.
Mm-hmm.
So start working on these things now, daily. You
Yeah.
can go for a walk, even if it's 10 minutes. I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't have 10 minutes to do something to move. And you're already eating, just make better choices.
Yep.
And then and one of the things that I talked to Dr. Christian Gonzalez about that he really feels passionately about that I do on a daily basis also are rituals,
Mm-hmm.
morning rituals. I mean, if you look, whether it's being a single parent, working multiple jobs, I mean, whatever it is, try and take an extra 5 or 10 minutes of the day for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It over time, it will make immense changes for you. So do the things that you can do for free and set up a plan for yourself. Maybe start putting away a little bit of money so you can go see the person that you want to see. Because, I mean, if that's the person that you vibe with most, that's going to be most beneficial for you.
Yep.
So, I mean, there are ways that we can start planning and forward thinking. That's the beauty of the prefrontal cortex. You utilize it. I mean, so
I love it. No, it's so true. And it's priorities. My fiance, and I live with my fiance and his son, his adult son, and they eat the way that I eat now. And at first, they were just kind of mind blown at how expensive it was.
mhm.
And I was like, I'm not putting shitty subpar dairy and meat into my body. I can't, you guys. Like, I
Yeah,
cannot afford to do that. Like, it's not even an option for me anymore. This is not an entitled elitist thing. I still believe doing the best you can. Like people say, I can't access organic or I can't access it. Just eat some real food. Stop eating processed things out of packages. Stop
yeah,
shopping the center of the grocery store.
100%.
Just make it that simple. You know, my honey brings home cheese, and I was like, babe, if you can, it would be preferred if we could have the dairy be organic, because that's higher up on the food chain. It's more important to me. And he's like, babe, I didn't buy any milk. And he's a smart dude. He goes, I didn't buy any milk. And I'm like, dairy, sour cream, you know, the cheese, the sour cream, the dairy. And he goes, oh, I didn't even think about that. So, you know, it's a
Mm-hmm.
learning process. And I
Of
joke
course, yeah.
because I've been married a few times, and you kind of have to break people in slowly. You can't just inundate them with all your ways because they think you're part of a weird cult, the
Yeah.
cult of health. So we are, but we're right. It's okay. But he feels so good. He's dropped 10 pounds. Everyone compliments how, you know, strong, because he's always been a strong dude, but he's really, really vital, but he really looks it now. He really looks good. And
Awesome.
it's just a given. Like he understands it now. He's there. We've lived together now through this whole pandemic, and we've been dating for about a year. So like it took a while, but he's on the tip. He gets it. He really tries to source the meat as more, you know, at least somewhat grass fed, whatever we can do, pastured eggs, whatever we can do, whatever's in our budget, whatever's at the store. We live in a rural area, so we don't always have access to the things that I would
Yeah.
prefer. But that budget, even when I was in bankruptcy, you guys, like fully broke, single mom, bankruptcy, I still prioritize my diet over everything else. I don't have nails. I don't do fancy things with my hair. I don't, I do use Botox. That's my priority. But you know, and I have friends who have nails and they have all the other things because that's something that's in their budget. But like, you just gotta, yes, it's expensive. That doesn't mean that it's not accessible or that you can't do it. I see people pull up in nice cars. I have had patients who are covered in tattoos. I know they spent well over $10,000 on their tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, the services you offer are too expensive. I'm like, no, that's your
Yeah.
prioritization of what you value a doctor to
Exactly.
be. That's not, has nothing to do with me. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my big rant. But I like good chocolate and good coffee and healthy food, and I splurge on it. And that's where a huge portion of my budget goes.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I have a lot of patients that do the same thing. They'll walk in with fancy bags or fancy somethings or drive up in a fancy car or whatever. And I don't have any judgments about it. But when somebody starts telling me that something's too expensive, I'm just like, okay, let me try and help you and create a better priority system for you, or help you understand the value of what we're doing here. Because that, I think, is what, I mean, doctors are supposed to be educators. I mean, that's what we're there. We're supposed to be educating people as to how they can make better choices for their health.
Yes.
And dentistry is one that is so important and integral into our overall health, because what I tell just about every new patient I see is everything you put in your body goes through your mouth. So,
and it comes out the other end.
And they're connected in the middle. So it's pretty important.
Yeah, it's everything.
So,
yeah, your food and your sleep. And those are, you can't build muscle and you can't sleep well and you can't, all the things. You can't have them if you're not putting good fuel in the tank. So why would you buy a Porsche and then fill it up with crappy gasoline, you know?
Exactly. 100%. And your body is the top of the line Porsche. I mean, you just have to take care of it.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to go through taking care of yourself. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
I wonder though, you know, for me, I didn't think highly of myself for a long time, and I didn't have a lot of confidence, and I didn't put a lot of emphasis on my health because I just didn't care, you know. Mm-hmm. I didn't care until I had a little daughter to raise, and then suddenly I cared. So I think some people really just don't care, and that's okay. I feel bad that they don't care, but that's for them. But at this point where we are currently in this global health crisis, those decisions they're making are impacting us.
Oh yeah.
People's bad food choices and bad lifestyle choices are directly impacting whether we are going to get through this quickly or in the next, I predict 3 to 5 years is how long this is going to go on. And so I don't know if you've seen that meme. And I'm not, again, this isn't about fat shaming, but there's like a morbidly obese woman on a cart and she's got holding McDonald's and a big gulp, and she has a mask on and she says, "You're not wearing a mask. You're endangering my health." And I'm like, actually, what obesity is doing right now, that's a whole other conversation, which we should probably talk about another time. But like, obesity is actually people who are malnourished, who have a bad nutritional status or poor nutritional status, and people who are obese usually kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, those people are shedding much more virus and it's more virulent. And we know this from the flu. We know this, and I have tons of posts about it, you guys, and I have a whole podcast episode coming out about it. So actually, no, people who are choosing to like chain smoke and live really poor qualities of life are actually creating like a vector situation for a virus that is impacting all of us in a major way. And so I implore everybody to, as a good citizen, like, okay, mask up if you want to mask up, especially in enclosed spaces. I mean, that's where we're going to transmit stuff. But like, the way you live your life is way more important than any mandates.
Yeah, absolutely. The daily habits and the daily things that you do, I mean, that's everything. So
and it's impacting all of us and how quickly we get through this. And people say, well, we can't do what Sweden did. No, we can't. We are a much sicker population. And there's no one person we can blame for all these deaths. Everyone wants to blame the president or blame this. That was because we were a shit show of health.
Accountability. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, nobody's going to change you except for you.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry. That's just what it is. And doing what's best for you, really what's best for you. Not Um,
You froze a
now,
sec. You're
yeah,
back.
now my battery's getting low. So,
Oh no.
um,
We should probably wrap up.
yes, we definitely should. So, all right. So I'm not even going to go into that. But you did. Well, I guess I'll just ask a couple more, two more questions, and then
Okay.
this is kind of about a little bit what we were talking about. Um, First of all, what's your opinion on how we teach health to our youth in the United States? Because I think that's really the important thing, and that's what's going to change the future for this country and the world. Because how we teach the young people in this country and like I said around the world is everything.
Yeah, well, my daughter got kicked out of health class in high school because she kept raising her hand and saying, that is incorrect, that is incorrect, that is incorrect. It's about insulin, it's about this, it's about, because she was raised by a naturopathic doctor and my mentor was like a grandpa to her. So like and she's now a nutritional therapist. So like
Mm-hmm.
but at the time it was just constant, and like she's texting me saying, Mom, my health teacher's arguing with me about this, but am I right? I'm like, yeah, you're 100% right. And so she got booted out of health class a few years ago because of this and didn't get a good grade. So I think the way we're teaching things on a, education platform level is garbage. So I don't know what to say there. We can just live by example and lead by example. And I've always tried to do that for her. She actually rebelled. It's funny, like usually you find drugs and alcohol under your kid's bed, and I would find Domino's pizza boxes and soda, like 40 liter or whatever the big soda things, and I would lose my mind. So that was, you have to lead by example, and however you're living your life and choosing to live your lifestyle, your children are going to emulate that. So that's a big one. And then what was this? I don't know
Yeah.
if I answered the question. What's the second part? Was there a second
No,
one?
no. It was just about how we're teaching about health to our youth,
Mess.
and what we can do to improve, basically.
We have to change the whole paradigm because I mean, at least now this is more common knowledge. But back when I got out of school and I was talking like we're talking right now, people looked at me like I had two heads.
Yeah.
So it's just a really, really, the things have changed for the better for sure, but it's a long road. I mean, just to
Yeah.
get people to wake up. And I've had so many wonderful people reach out to me, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people saying that they just, they have had the virus now, they got through it with their family, and they were just so grateful for my information because it empowered them throughout the whole thing and they knew what to do.
Awesome.
But just eating real food is like a novel concept to people. It's almost like
Yeah.
it's an act of rebellion to talk about
Yeah.
eating like just whole foods.
Yeah.
People want to argue
I,
about it. I'm like,
yeah.
you keep arguing for your limitations. I'm going to be over here munching on some fat and protein and salad.
Yeah.
You know, like,
And I think just sharing your good experiences and just living your life in the most loving and vital way that you can is going to be the only way that things ever change, because people know how they feel.
yes,
And usually you can see it, but even you don't necessarily have to say anything, but they know how they feel, and then they can see you.
yes.
And
And think about vibrations. I just know, like, I was munching on some potato chips last night, and I finally, I found myself like, "Argh." And I'm like a potato chip addict. If they're in the house, they're in my mouth. It's over. So I just don't bring them in the house. I don't bring any of that
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
in the house. But my sweetie brought it in the house, and I was just like, this food is so low vibrational. Like the
yeah,
vibration on the food. That sounds so woo, but I don't. When you chop up a fresh salad, and he actually watched me eat him, and he goes, "I'm gonna have a salad." And
yeah,
he's eating a salad, but like fresh cooked food that you prepare yourself has such a high vibration on it. And
yeah.
crappy,
It really does.
crummy, packaged, processed stuff that comes out of a convenience store has such a low vibration on it. So
Yeah,
that's
100%.
that's kind of how I judge whether it's going in the gullet.
I, I'm right there with you. I don't even have the things in the house, just like you said. Okay, so unfortunately, we are going to start wrapping up. I would definitely love to do this again with you. I love talking to you, and I
Yeah.
know everybody else is loving this. And my phone's going to die.
Okay.
so
Well,
it's so in closing, I want you to imagine if this were the last time you ever had to share your thoughts, and you could only share 3 things that people should start implementing in their lives immediately to start to improve their health. What would they be?
stay away from fake food. Stay away from fake people, and move your body every day because God gave it to you. So shake it.
Yeah. So that's it, guys. Real people, real food, and move.
Yeah.
So definitely agree with
Nothing
that.
novel.
Yeah. So again, I want to give a quick recap for Dr. Tina. So guys, if you are watching this and you for some reason don't follow her, please check her out. Her account is at Dr. Tina. That's at DRTYNA. Also check out her website, drtina.com, same spelling. Um, Always feel free to reach out, guys. I mean, I obviously we're very busy and we kind of get to people as we can, but please feel free to reach out. I always welcome comments, feedback, suggestions. If there's anybody else you guys would like to see on the show or any topics that you want specifically covered, please feel free to let me know. I'm happy to explore all different types of possibilities and talk to different types of people. So I love doing it. Please check out all the episodes on my YouTube channel, The Art of Mindful Medicine. You can also check out my website, www.mindful.doctor. And obviously, my Instagram account is on here. And we are, of course, on Instagram Live until I can figure out something about a better platform so it doesn't keep kicking us off. But I will always announce the new shows at least a few days beforehand. Again, I really appreciate you guys. And again, like I said earlier, if you guys joined in later, please share this for Dr. Tina. Obviously for myself too, but I know that Dr. Tina puts a lot of work into this, and she's done a lot of spent a lot of energy trying to build this platform so she can reach many people, and so please share this for her.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And as I always end with a quote. This is from Greene. The boldness of asking deep questions may require unforeseen flexibility if we are to accept the answers. So that's something that definitely goes along with what we were talking about. I definitely suggest everybody replay this and maybe listen to that again or look up the quote, because there's a lot of meaning in that. And again, Dr. Tina, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on here. I appreciate getting to meet your puppy and everything we got to talk about. So I hope you and everybody else have a beautiful day. And as always, guys, stay awesome, stay mindful.
Thanks, Doc.
All
Bye,
right,
guys.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, Tina, bye-bye.